Denny Schaefer. He's an idiot.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. It is episode 38. Very exciting. I forgot to undo the internet on my other computer. Should I go undo that real quickly?
No.
I shouldn't do that?
No.
Okay. Well, I see
I'm
we're
just
having
gonna-
trouble with X.
Oh.
Just let it go. Just
There we
leave it and whatever. Okay.
You know, we're so like on time and
Prepared.
everything's organized, and then it's always the last minute something.
Yeah, I forgot to
happens.
unplug the internet on my computer.
Is your mic on today?
Yes, my mic is on today.
I'm making sure.
Unlike other days. All right, it's the Sharon Denny podcast. It's episode number 38. We're very excited. It's been Holy Week, and we're going to talk about Easter. We're going to talk about God. We are going to talk about whatever the Holy Spirit leads us to talk about. But before we introduce our special guest, and we have a very funny story of how we actually met this man, starting back in 2012. So we're going to get to all of that today. Hopefully you guys are ready to go. You're going to share this video, and God will be glorified through all of it. Let's say hello and thank you to today's Friday sponsor. All right, there it is, Johnny Castillo, our longest running sponsor, who has just signed up for May, for all 5 Fridays in May.
We are booked through May. We are booked 2/3 of the way of June.
I know.
So, you know,
and here I
humbled
thought,
and grateful. And
yes, we are. And here I thought we were just going to do one podcast, and now we're on podcast 38.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to our guest because he's a busy man.
Oh.
He is a man of what?
I was just saying hi. Good morning to a couple of our viewers. Tommy
Atwell.
Julian.
Hello, Tommy. Julian.
You
Julian.
are not. He's having rabbit for Easter dinner.
That's funny, though. It is funny. All right, let's bring in our special guest today from our church, Soma City Church. It's Pastor Sammy. Sammy, welcome.
Hey, hi guys. Thanks for having me.
Good Friday morning.
That's right.
Okay, so let's just start there, Sammy. And first off,
Yeah.
thanks for, I know this is a busy week for you and for all pastors. Why do they refer to it as Good Friday? Because it wasn't really a good day for.
It's not good at all, actually.
So
it's
why
good
do they refer to it?
It's good in hindsight, right? You know, and I think it's just, you know, one of those stories that I always think it's so fascinating because, you know, really naturally it's easy for us to skip Friday because we're looking at Easter. We're like, okay, we know Jesus comes back from the grave, you know, he dies on the cross, and we kind of want to skip by it. But I think the heart behind Good Friday is that it's really actually hard to appreciate what happens on Sunday until you actually first pause and consider the weight of what happened on Friday. And so when Friday happened 2,000 years ago, there was nothing good about it at all, you know, but we know in hindsight that, you know, God was going to take obviously one of the worst tragedies in the history of the world, and is going to leverage it for the greatest good for all of humanity. And so I just personally, I love that reminder, you know, because it's not obviously the big picture, the lead story is what Jesus did for us, but I think it's also a reminder, you know, in our lives, you know, that a lot of times Friday doesn't feel good when you're on Friday. But because Jesus defeated the death, like we know Sunday is always coming no matter what we're facing. And so it's kind of this weird oxymoron, you know, because it's a horrible day, but it turned out to be the day that God brought the greatest good to the world, you know, so.
That's a good explanation. And it turns out to be a great day for us because of Sunday. But back then they
Yeah.
didn't know what was going to happen Sunday, even though they were told, and they weren't sure and they didn't believe and all of that.
That's
All
right.
So,
Well, and I had heard a long time ago from a pastor that if it weren't for Good Friday, Easter Sunday nor Christmas Day would even be possible. but Good Friday was the main event.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with
Agree or
that.
disagree, Sammy?
Agree. It all came down to good. It's all obviously interconnected, because it's like, but without Good Friday, you don't have the resurrection, and the resurrection is what makes and breaks everything. But he had to die so that he could be resurrected, and so yeah, God's a good storyteller. He knew what he was doing.
So, what is more important? Is Christmas Day more important, or is Easter?
Are you asking this theologically, or are you asking this personally? I can give you both.
Both.
Both. Okay. I think personally, actually, my answer is probably the same. I just love Easter, right? Obviously, Jesus coming on earth, was good news, right? A savior has been born to you, and so Christmas is worth celebrating. It's the birth of Christ. But none of that would have mattered if he didn't die on the cross, right? And none of it would have mattered if he didn't resurrect. It would have been like, okay, God came and, he knows what it's like to be us, and we're still not saved. And so if I had to put all my chips on the table, it would be for Easter. I believe Paul even talks about in one of his letters, about how basically if the resurrection is true, like we're just fools, like we should all just go home and we're wasting our time. And so I think all of it hinges on the resurrection of Jesus Christ. There's a lot of people that believe that Jesus lived on earth that don't believe that Jesus was resurrected, and I just think that Easter is the main event of Christianity. One, that he died for all of our sins, and two, that 3 days later he literally came out of the, I mean, it's so crazy when you actually think about what you're saying, but that 3 days later he literally came out of the grave. Like if that happens, if that really did happen, that changes everything about life.
So, as a pastor, do you find more pressure on you to come up with a message, not necessarily for Christmas, but for Easter, because this is our faith hinges on this day being true, and the Bible says it's true, and I believe it's true.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you had more pressure on you, especially with what Soma City Church is doing by having such a I mean, it's an event. Renting out the Stranahan is Stranahan is a historic venue, and you got room for 4,000 people or whatever. Do you feel more pressure as a pastor because of that?
Yeah, yes and no, right? So I think that, I think there's a part of me that used to feel a lot of pressure, one, because it's a big day, right? People are inviting their neighbors, they're inviting their cousins, people who wouldn't go to church, all year will come on Easter, usually if you ask them to come. And so there's that pressure. There's also the pressure of like, everyone's heard the story before, right? Like we're doing a Revelation series right now. I know I got some cliffhangers in there. I know I got some things in there that people haven't seen before. Easter is like, everybody coming in already knows the punchline, before you get to it. And so there's always that challenge of just like, okay, so how do I present a very familiar truth in a way that is relevant, refreshing, and it's kind of new? So I've always felt that. But I'll tell you guys this, though. This was a game changer for me. And I think it's been the last 3 or 4 years, is that I realized that I think a lot of the pressure went off when I started to acknowledge the one thing that I felt like nobody acknowledged. And I grew up in church. I've been in church practically my whole life, right? I felt like there was something about Easter that, at least in the church tradition I grew up in, that no one ever acknowledged. And once I started acknowledging it, I felt like it took so much pressure off. And what I mean by that is that I grew up in church. Again, Jesus came, he died, he resurrected. And I just always wondered, you guys, I'm like, this is a hard thing to believe. Like I always just secretly just felt like people were just like, oh yeah, and then he came out of the grave. And I was like, oh yeah. But on the inside of me, I'm like, okay, let's think about what we're saying. Why are we saying it like, like this is just like, I went to a restaurant and ordered pancakes and ate it. Like, I'm like, this is like, and so then the last 3 or 4 years, I started acknowledging it, because then I started looking in the text and I realized that almost all of Jesus's closest friends, and you talked about this earlier, Danny, like they weren't expecting they doubted the resurrection. They had a heart, like they weren't sitting outside the grave. Like I heard a preacher say once, you would think that they would be sitting outside the grave on day 3 doing a countdown like 10, 9, 8, 7, ta-da! Because he told them over and over that he was coming back. None of them expected it. Like nobody was waiting at the grave. And then I was just reading this the other day. Jesus shows up, right? So he's in the room. The disciples are hiding because they're scared, He shows up in the room and they're startled. They think they just saw a ghost. And he's like, hey, touch my hands. And then it says, I love this verse. It says, they had joy and excitement, but they still did not believe. Like, it was so hard. And these are the guys that saw Jesus walk on water. They saw him raise the dead. They saw him calm the storms. And so I just realized, I'm like, okay, like, it's okay. It's not only is it okay, but we have to acknowledge that some of the story is hard to believe. And so when I started to say that, then I started to realize, like, eyebrows started getting raised in the room, because then people are going, yeah, it is hard to believe. And then what I tell people is, I'm like, hey, if you have a hard time believing the story of a resurrection, you're in great company. Because all these guys, these jokers in there, they had a hard time believing it, right? Jesus didn't walk in, they were like, we knew it, you told us. Like, they did not, like, he had to, it says in Acts, I believe, that he kept showing up and offering convincing proof over and over. Like, he had to keep proving to them. Think about how crazy that is, Sharon. Like, he's like, it's me, I'm resurrected. And they're like, nah, it's a trick. Like, he had to, for 40 days, continuing to convince them. And so all that to say, like, I felt like, to me, the pressure was relieved when I realized that I can acknowledge to people that, hey, if you don't immediately think that this is true, that's okay. His closest friends didn't immediately think it was true. But what's good about Jesus is he was so patient. Like, I would have voted those jokers off the island. I would have been like, you guys, think about it. Like, I spent 3 years with you. I told you it was going to happen. You saw me do the craziest miracles, and you still, I would have been like, we're getting new people in here. You guys need to get out of here. You guys are never going to get it. But I love that Jesus was so patient with the people who struggle. I mean, Thomas, right? You always talk about it. Thomas, like, everybody told him, he's like, nope. He's like, unless I see it with my eyes, he's like, I'm not buying it. And I love that when Jesus comes back, and obviously the Bible doesn't give us tone, but I like to think Jesus had a sense of humor. I don't think he was mad. I think he was just laughing and just like, all right, come on, Thomas. Like, Thomas was probably like, oh, he's like, no, come on, man. You wanted to touch it? Like, I'm right here. Like, but he was so accommodating, and he didn't boot them just because they had a hard time believing it. Like, it's almost like all he needed was just a tiny little bit of faith from them, and it was enough for them to be a part of the story. So that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's my favorite part of the Easter story.
And honestly, getting back to what you said a little while ago, is I think The Chosen has really done a great job at depicting the apostles as normal people, because you don't get to see, like you said, that side of them when you read scripture. You think everything was just perfect. And then we're also, have you watched AD the Bible?
No.
Which is a Mark Burnett production. It's on Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. So they have the Bible, which was from years ago, really good. And then they did AD the Bible. But the brutality of the Roman soldiers and all of that, like hiding out, that was no joke. I mean, like, I'd be hiding out,
Yep, 100%.
So like, it just gives you something to think about as you're reading scripture to kind of compare it to. At least for me, it does.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're just joining us on the Denny and Sharon podcast on DennyRadio, this is Sammy. He is the pastor of Soma City, which happens to be our church. All right. So you're doing an off-campus message or service at Scranton this Sunday at 10 a.m. Open to everybody. Doors open at 9:30.
Yes, sir.
If you don't have a place to worship, come out. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
So why do an off-campus event like this for Easter?
Yeah, great question. One phrase that we've been saying a lot, in the last year, is that we just want to make space for more people. And so part of it is just, where we normally gather on Sundays is very limited in terms of parking and kids. And so we just know that if we do Easter there, that where it just sort of puts a ceiling on the amount of people who get to hear the good news. And I just said a long time ago, like it's one thing if people don't come, but if people want to come and have a chance to hear the good news, like, I never want to put a ceiling on it. And so last year we were trying to figure out, like, we're either going to do 20 services and then, none of our staff is going to get to be home for Easter, which is not fun, or we're going to trust God and just, take it. And it was a huge step for us last year because we didn't know what was going to happen, but it was just so encouraging. There were so many people who, and if anyone's listening and they fit in this category, who are far from God. I talk to so many people who don't go to church, don't believe in God. And I'm like, but they got a chance to come and just hear the good news and decide for themselves. And so that's why we're going there, is that we just want to make space for maybe people who don't see themselves in the story, or people who don't think, that they could ever have a relationship with God. We want them to come see and be like, no, you're actually in the story. Like, Jesus actually came for people like you. Your unbelief or your past does not disqualify you from following Jesus. Like Sharon just said, like, all of these guys were normal. A lot of them were knuckleheads. Like, it's like they were us. Like, they were like, Peter was slicing someone's ear off when Jesus was arrested. Like, he still didn't get it, And so that's our heart, is that we want to create space for as many people as possible, for people to be able to invite their friends and their neighbors to come and hear the good news of Jesus. So.
And it was pretty packed last year.
Yeah, it was.
But I personally, I love the fact I think it was last Sunday when you said, even if just one person showed up and their life has changed, it's worth all of the time and energy that you all put into it, because Denny and I just show up kind of, but all your servers and volunteers and all of that.
It's worth it for just one person. That's right.
I mean, that's so cool, because that just solidified to me that it's just not about numbers for Soma City.
So go ahead. I was just gonna say it's what Sharon said. It's like, that's just like Jesus. Like, Jesus would do all of that for one person. Like, yeah.
So what kind of preparation goes into this event? I mean, with everything, when do you guys collectively as Soma City Church start working on the Stranahan Easter service?
January is probably, and that felt a little bit late, just because there's a lot of pieces to it, and trying to not only get the volunteers, we're trying to think of how do we want to creatively tell the story, and how do we want to craft the journey so that everybody can feel like they're a part of it. So we've been talking about it since January. I mean, I'm kind of psychotic in some ways, but I started working on this Easter, like, probably I got in my car after last Easter and I opened the notes app on my phone, and I was like, oh, these are things that I would want, to do for the next one. And so it's always been on our mind, but January we've been working on it, and then the last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind, but we're ready now, to just kind of see what God will do.
So I've been part of the 21-day Soma City prayer up to. Was too.
He's like, don't leave me out.
I quit smoking.
So instead of just fasting on Friday, I'm like, that's too easy for me, just to do one day. So, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I like an occasional cigar, and by occasionally I mean every day. And I like my cocktails. I'm a margarita guy. I like my IPAs, and so I said, you know what? I want to do something that not necessarily hurts, but something that is a little stronger than one day a week. It's Friday. Yeah. So when Jeremy sent out the email, I'm like, all right, I'm just cold turkey for since the last day of March 31st, when he sent it out. I haven't smoked or I haven't drank. And I noticed how Satan has turned up the level of, temptation or whatever around me. Yeah. So my question for you is you guys are putting on a big event. You're going to have potentially thousands of new people at the Stranahan that don't know the Lord. So has Satan turned up the heat on you personally? And has Satan turned up the heat on the staff? Do you have any stories of how it's like, holy cow, never saw this coming, this roadblock jumped in? Because Satan is not happy that this is going on Sunday at all.
Yeah, no, 100%. Just one quick thought about what you just said about the fasting thing is like, that's incredible, by the way, that you're doing that journey. But it's interesting how that works, right? It's like the bigger of a threat you are, then all of a sudden the enemy's, interest is peaked, and he's like, all right, now I got to put a stop to that, And so it's been an interesting, I think, month. And what's kind of cool, so I'm going to answer your question, but from a different angle, is I had a lady come up to me at church. I'd never talked to her before last Sunday. And she came, she gave me a hug and she was crying. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, man, I just really felt like the Lord has just really placed on my heart to just be praying for you and your wife in the last 2 weeks. She's like, I don't know if anything's going on, but I just wanted you to know that I'm interceding for you. And so I gave her a hug. She prayed for us. I've probably had 5, 6, maybe 7 people that I didn't ask for anything that either sent an email or a text or a call to just be like, hey, we just got a sense that we should be praying for you and praying protection for your family. And so I think it's interesting that, when the enemy attacks you, sometimes you see it from the perspective of like, man, things are crazy. Like, what is happening, Other times, though, I've seen it from the perspective of all of a sudden God is rallying all of these people to just be praying, And so I feel like for me, that's been honestly one of the clearest signs, that the enemy is not happy with what we're doing, is how many people have, quote unquote, spontaneously, they're like, I woke up in the middle of the night and just felt like I should be praying for you guys, and I was like, okay, that's not random. And so it's been, there's been things here and there, with our kids, with my wife, but we've probably prayed more. My wife and I have probably prayed more, this is no joke, in the last 2 weeks than we have in the last maybe even year. Like, just feeling that sense of just like I woke up, I think it was last Saturday, like I was texting my wife and this is rare for me. That's just not how I'm wired, but it's rare for me to wake up with like just a lot of anxiety that's not tied to anything. Like my heart was racing. I was super anxious, and I grabbed my phone. I'm texting my wife. I'm like, I don't, pray for me. And then I put some worship music on. Like I just needed, it was real strange, just out of nowhere, just waking up. And it's not like I was stressing that night. I just woke up and it was like, my heart's racing, I'm freaking out. And so yeah, I think that, they're expected things, but I always, and I was telling my wife this, just always remind myself too, that, going back again to Jesus's death and resurrection, like the enemy is real and the enemy does not want us to be a part of God's story, but God's real and God's strong and God's powerful and he's with us. And so I'm always just leaning on that God, like this is your story. These are your people. You care about reaching those people more than I do. And so I'm trusting that, as we're going to war, that you've got our backs, so.
That was a good answer.
Well, no, but I mean, because some of our former churches, like in Atlanta and Louisiana, when they would be sending off a mission team, things would always be happening in that mission team. Someone getting sick, someone going in the hospital, someone's house burned once. I mean, like there was always something trying to be stopped from going over to other countries. So.
Well, and you said when I first reached out to you, you said it didn't look likely you'd be able to join us because you've got sickness going through the house.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I wonder how that just has to happen Holy Week. That
3 days before. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sick girls in the
3 days.
So I found that interesting.
So, yeah.
All right. Here's something that I struggle with, and then I don't know if you got any more questions.
Is this like
for Sammy?
turning into counseling now for
Well,
Sammy?
I struggle with this every year.
All right, I just want to show that back again.
There you go.
10 a.m. on Sunday.
Doors open at 9:30, people, and I'll be fighting you for a good seat.
There's Sammy in action.
I like it.
Let me just say this: it's the best.
Series.
Thank you. I blacked out there for a minute. On
Revelation.
Yeah.
That I have ever personally heard. So
in all the years I've been going to church, I do not remember a pastor ever doing anything on Revelation other than like a little drive-by.
You know what? I never thought I would ever do anything on Revelation. Like when I felt like God was saying do Revelation, I was like, I don't think I can do this,
And then you took a break, and Denny and I were both like, what are they
Come on.
Come
on. I did not like
coming back. I'm like, we're coming back.
And it's amazing. And God is doing, I mean, the things that I've learned, listen, your level has really increased. God has definitely in the last year, 2 years, he's done some things in you and he's changed you in just some amazing ways. And Revelation is proof of that because no pastors touch it and you do. And God is using that. I mean, obviously it's all God that's doing it. So it's been amazing. But the thing that I struggle with every Christmas and especially Easter are the Christmas and Easter people, the see and hear. And I get angry and I get frustrated. And I know that's not the right emotion to have because I know Christ would never do that. He would welcome the people. Yeah. But it just breaks my heart that people play church. They play it twice a year. Yeah. And they think that they're fooling God and God will not be mocked and he will not be fooled. Yeah. So how do you deal with that when you know that there's a good portion of the people that are going to be there Sunday that are just there to check off the list? I'm a good person. I go Christmas, I go Easter, but they're not fooling anybody. They bought the lie. So how do you deal with seeing ears?
That's a great question. If I'm just being really honest, that's part of why I prefer Easter to Christmas. I think it's a lot harder for me. I think just being completely honest with you guys, I really struggled with this at Christmas, because Christmas is just, like, just from a church perspective, the carryover to January is minimal at best, So people do, it's Christmas, so we're gonna go before we go do the thing that we really want to do. Like, it's just another part of the thing. We got to go to lunch and go do gifts, and so let's just come for an hour and you do the thing. And so I really struggle with it because I'm like, because from our end, it's like it feels like we're putting so much work into this thing that's just another part of this thing that people are doing. And so, but having said that, though, I think that there's a couple things that's really helped me. Is one, I think that in some ways, to be fair, I think the church has created that culture, right? Like, I think we've created, now I'm speaking from like clergy church perspective, like in some ways we've created a very consumeristic model of church, and so we reward people to be like, yeah, just come get the thing and then go do your other thing, And so in some ways, I think we're just reaping the harvest of, seeds that we've sown, pastors like me have sown. But the other thing that's really helped me, though, is I've tried to kind of take that box of people and kind of like put them into different camps, right? I think that there are surely the people you're talking about, Danny, who are just like, I'm a good person. I'm going to check my 2 weeks and I'm good. And God's like, really? Like, but I do think that, and these are the people that I get excited about. There are people who it's like, it's not even a category for them. They're not, they're going either because someone they just love or know or friends with just invited them, Like, I have a neighbor who's coming on Easter, and like, he doesn't, so he came to church once. It's so funny. Danny, I invited him and he came, and I was talking to him afterwards, and I realized he doesn't even have a framework for coming back. Like, it's like going to a concert, Like, I was talking to him at a neighborhood block party. He's like, so, like, do you give your speech? Like, is it you do the same speech every week? Like, is like you guys go back? Like, because I was like, is he gonna come back? And it wasn't even in his mind that you go back. It's like he went to a concert and he's back, And so I'm realizing this guy doesn't even have a framework for like, I go every Sunday. He's like, so you give that same speech every week? I'm like, no, it's not quite a speech, It's a little bit different. It's, he's like, you do a different speech every week? I'm like, yeah, like, and so there are people like that. And those are the people that I get excited about, who it's not so much that they're like, oh, I'm going to check my 2 boxes and be a good person. It's just not even on their radar. And someone's like, hey, come check this thing out. And they come. And so for those people, the way I look at it is just, I heard someone say once, it's almost like we often think of, coming to Christ, like, 0 to 100, you don't know him and then you know him. But I love, someone put it in a scale. They're like, think of -10 to +10, some people might be a -5, but this experience just moved them to a -1. That still is not where you want them to be, but they're like taking a step closer. And so for my neighbor, it was like, okay, like, he doesn't have a framework for even coming back, but he came once, and now he has enough. And so he's actually coming this Easter, which is funny because he's bringing a friend with him. I was like, this is great, And so, but he's taken a step closer. And so I think for me, I just try and kind of like, filter through the people who are just trying to check the box, and then try and look at those people who are like, hey, you just don't even know. And so I want to take this chance to plant the good news in your heart, and then I'm trusting that at some point the Holy Spirit will stir something in you, and you'll be like, wait a minute, I know someone, or I know a place potentially where I could find God.
I remember when I was a kid, because we grew up Catholic, and we had this older priest, Father Fackler, and I was an altar boy. And so Sunday, and I think it was midnight mass, and we were all there, and it was packed. And, there's so many people that don't normally go to church, but whatever. And he went after people. I mean, for those of you that think that you're fooling God and just coming on Christmas, you're wrong. And I mean, like, he was
he brought a little Baptist in.
He was yelling, and I was like, oh, man, I'm glad my family comes every week. I don't want to be these people. But it was like, you could literally hear people, and I was probably 8th grade, 9th grade.
Yeah.
You could literally hear all the people moving around in the pews, and keys. You could hear people keys, like, give me my keys, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So that's probably not the right approach, though, to win hearts. by screaming at them
Well,
and telling them that
I
you're
know.
not fully God.
Well, what did we learn? It's not our job to convince or convict, but to communicate or convey. There were like 4 C's. Do you know what those are, Sammy? We're not supposed to convict. It's not our job to convict.
To convict, yeah.
But to communicate or to convey.
Yeah, something like that.
There's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Nazi, but I can't remember
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, and I think that there's a space, you know, that, you know, you can really kind of push and challenge people, you know. But I always just try and like I'm like, I don't have a problem pushing people. I just think we just have to remember the why, right? Because I grew up in church traditions where it's just like, just don't, you know, and I'm like, and no one ever paused to tell you like, no, it's actually like good for you. Like it's like Jesus is actually like, you know, it's not just don't do this or do this. Like you're not just coming to church every week to check a box. You're coming because there's something about corporate worship, and there's a way you're going to experience God with people that you'll never experience on your own. You know, and I think that's part of the challenge today too in 2025 world is like we all got phones and smartphones, and so I can listen to any preacher I want and get the best worship music in my car by myself. You know, but it's still not the same as being with a community of people.
So if you could speak to the people watching or that will watch this later on,
Yeah.
can you, in your own words, describe the difference between religion and relationship?
oh, that's a heavy one.
That's a great question. The religion and so a word. She got the high five on that one. She's like, let's go.
Because I don't want to give.
I think that so one word that I love using is I love using like friendship, right? I think relationship is good too, you know, but I think most people understand friendship, right? When you look at someone, you're like, that person is my friend. Like I think we understand what that means, you know. That means we have a relationship, right? We know each other and we care about each other and we love each other. And I think fundamentally that's what Jesus came to establish between us and God, you know, like as a friendship. And it's actually interesting. I think it's in John 15, if I'm remembering correctly. Jesus is talking to his disciples and he's like, I no longer call you, he's like, I now call you friends. Like you're my friends now because you know the will of my Father. It's a relationship. And but for me, growing up in church, you know, it was like, you know, I would say religion is like, it's a set of rules, it's a formula, you check these boxes, then God is happy. You don't do these things that God is not happy. It's the scale, right? You know, it's like, you know, all of my high school days, I felt like I was constantly teetering on the scale. Like, you know, and some days I'm doing pretty good, and other days like God can now be happy with me right now, you know. And so people always ask me, Sharon, that like, when did you like give your life to Christ? And it's such a hard question for me to answer because I grew up in church my whole life. I was around it my whole life, but I think most of what I had was religion. It was just a system of laws and things that I had to do to make God happy. It wasn't until I pulled out of that context and I moved to Toledo, Ohio, and my parents weren't there to drag me to church. Now I had to decide for myself, you know, like, you know, I didn't have to do it anymore because no one's going to drag me. And then that's when I feel like my relationship and my friendship with Jesus became real. Now we're talking. I'm honest. I'm telling him how I feel. I'm listening to him. He's convicting me. He's changing my heart, you know? And so I think that's the difference, is that you feel like you're in a real relationship with someone that knows you and that's speaking to you, and that you can just be honest with them and tell them exactly how you feel. And that's what Jesus did, right? That was a big difference between Jesus and the religious leaders, you know, is that Jesus just went and had dinner and meals and hung out with people. I mean, they literally nicknamed him a friend of sinners because that's what he was doing, you know, and he flipped the whole thing upside down and he invited everybody in to come have friendship. And so I always encourage people tell me all the time, they're like, I'm not religious, I don't go to church. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Have a conversation. Tell God that. I'm like, tell him you don't believe in him. Tell him you doubt him. Tell him you're mad at him. Like, because then you've taken a step towards a relationship and a friendship. And that's what he wants anyways.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So someone wants to know, and I would love for Sammy to tell his story of coming over here, but I don't know if there's time for that.
Well, it's up to Sammy because he's a busy man. He's got to save souls today.
Mary wants to know if they can join Easter service remotely.
Not for this Sunday. Unfortunately, we don't have the stream. That's one thing about the training in the old building, is just like there's just no way for us to stream it. But we will have a restream of it. it just won't be live. You know, we'll post it online probably by Tuesday at the very latest. So.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to?
Okay.
Look
So
at that.
That's where we met Sammy.
Look at that. That's a West YMCA, right?
Yeah, 2012.
2012. We were up from Louisiana, and we were we went and you were part of North Point. We were obviously, that was our church before we left, and so
we went to see Toby Mac in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
So that just days before that. I mean, it was.
We drove from Mandeville to.
Yeah, it was like December 18th or something. Toby was in.
In Baton Rouge. Yeah.
Baton Rouge, and he did. It was awesome, and you were there. We didn't know who you were. We just what I want, and I don't want to offend you, but I'm like, you're like
right.
You're like
yeah. Basically, it's like get everybody excited, MC, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Wasn't it weren't you talking about compassion too?
So I did both. So like I come and speak for like 20 minutes, but before that, I hype the crowd, introduce the band, and get them all excited. So
right. So then we're like, wow, this guy's pretty awesome. And then so we come back to Toledo and we go to church, and all of a sudden this guy walks out on the platform, and Sharon goes, "Oh my gosh, it looks like Sammy." And I lean in, I'm like, that's because it is Sammy.
I said, that looks like the guy from Toby Mac's concert. I didn't know your name.
At Baton Rouge.
And I said, that's because it's him. And then we were just blown away. And then after service, we tracked you down, and that's where that picture
What are the odds?
Look how drunk we all look.
Why does Sammy
right? 2012.
Sammy hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, so I'm saying he looks like
I don't know about that. That's
a nice look there with the red tie and your untucked shirt.
I know.
Well, that
that's
was
right.
just
I have to bring that back.
crazy. That was so crazy, though. And then we fast forward 10 years later when we're up here, and lo and behold, Toby Mac comes to Toledo, and I said to Denny, we are getting front row tickets. I don't care how much. He's like my guy. I love him.
I love him too.
And the kids will still talk about that concert to this day. And lo and behold, if you and Ryan and your families weren't sitting over and you come over, you say to Olivia and Josh, "Hey, I can get you up on the stage to dance."
I forgot about this.
Yeah, we had pictures of that too.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
So they went on stage for that last song.
You brought them up.
I forgot about that. That's fun.
It was just amazing. But the thing is this is how God works. Okay. We go to a concert, and we actually felt like we connected with you, and then we come back to Toledo, and there you are, and we connected with you, and then we permanently moved to back to Toledo in 2014. And what did we do? We connected with you, and we've been connecting pretty much ever since.
Wow.
And it's like, for people, it's like, that just doesn't happen. That's just not how is it?
Baton Rouge of all places. I know.
I mean, it's like,
I remember that show. It's that venue across from the river, right? I remember exactly where it was. Yeah.
It's just amazing.
And honestly, Josh fell asleep. Now think about Toby Mac's concert.
Yes.
Our chairs, and he slept. He had a fedora on, and he fell asleep.
He's like 7 years old. I mean, he was past his bedtime.
Rob Lousy.
Oh my goodness!
Are you gonna have
Rob?
Former roommates of mine on the show. Hi, Sammy.
What's up, Rob?
Rob's out in Denver. I talk to Rob all the time.
Rob and I go way, way back, and that's awesome.
Yeah, he's got the stories. All right.
So we'll have Sammy on another time to tell his story, because you guys,
it's a long one. I'll come back. It's a long one, but it's a good one. So
yeah. All right, Sammy. Any parting thoughts for people before we cut you loose?
I'm a preacher, so I always have thoughts, but I'll just say one thing. One of my favorite things to tell people, especially people who maybe are like, again, not religious, or maybe don't believe in God or aren't sure, is I always tell them, like, listen, like if Jesus were physically alive, like walking the streets of Toledo, Ohio, and you hung out with him, you would really like him. I just want people to know that. I'm just like, even if you don't agree with what he preached or whatever, you would, because 2,000 years ago, people who were nothing like Jesus loved to be around him. Sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes, like they just flocked. Zacchaeus, who's like a gangster, it's like hung out with Jesus. And so that's just always, I just want to tell people, I'm like, listen, you may not agree with what he preached. You know, you may not believe in everything he believed in, but you would have liked him. And I think you would have liked him because you would have known that he liked you. I think that's what Jesus did. He walked around, people were like, this guy really genuinely cares about me. And people are drawn to that. And I just always want people to know, man, you would like Jesus if you met him physically, and you would like him too now. So
Yeah.
There you go.
I agree.
All right,
appreciate
Sam,
you guys.
thank you. Good luck on Sunday. We'll be praying for you as always.
All right. I'll see you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
We'll
Sammy,
see you.
bye.
That was awesome.
There you go. So this Sunday at 10 a.m.
There it is.
Strahan in Toledo.
All right, we'll take you seeing ears, Easter people. Come on by. It'll be pretty awesome.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I know. God's working on me about that. It's like even when Chris and I on the radio show have been
Chris
talking.
Hollywood.
Yep, we've been talking about Holy Week and all that, and I think it was Monday, and I think it was our Monday podcast when I started saying, when I started talking about God, it's like, ooh, people are getting freaky because I'm talking about God, and I'm like, I don't need to do that. I'm just like, you know what? Just talk about whatever I feel like I'm supposed to talk about, and don't make it weird. Even though I know for a lot of people, soon as you mention God, click. Soon as you mention, you're a person of faith, click. And it just breaks my heart because I know what God has done for me. I know what God has done for you and I, because our relationship, we would not be together if it wasn't for God. That is our glue that keeps us together, is our commitment to the Lord and his word. But in secular society, people don't want to hear it. They're so they bought into the lies of the world, which is run by Satan, and he's a lot more powerful than people realize, and it just breaks my heart.
Spiritual warfare.
But hey,
it is. Here's a piece of advice.
Okay.
You do you, boo.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. All right, we got a lot of comments
Dave
here.
Punk is saying you're live at Highland Meadows. He must have you on his phone.
Great, Dave. I love it. Preach it. Invite the Highland Meadows folks. Dave's probably getting ready to go play. Dave, wish I could join you, my man. Can I come at 4:30 to catch another 9 with you guys after I get off with my show?
Judy saying hi, Denron.
Hello, Judy.
And then there's Terry. It's listening while she's driving. See, you don't have to really watch. You can also listen.
Oh, what about Denron over Share Den? Which one do you like better?
Denron was, I think, I don't know. I said
Denny and Sharon.
Denron. I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know.
Sheridan.
Let's look at Tommy's. Yes, let's support Denny and Sharon by subscribing.
Yes, it's 99 cents a month, people. We're on a fixed income.
We're gonna mark that one.
Although my cigar budget has not been used for the last 21 days, or my beer budget, so we're actually doing pretty good this month.
Oh,
that's Pastor Steve.
Isn't it interesting that the soldiers were guarding an empty tomb?
Yeah.
Big bad soldier stood outside the tomb and guarded it, and it was empty. How embarrassing.
Had to be.
Now, that is one of the things that I'm talking about with the AD Bible. Was it the AD Bible?
Yep, that's when they crucified him all the way up until...
and then they actually killed those soldiers who
because they didn't want
the tomb, because they didn't want them telling people that the tomb was empty.
That it actually happened, that it was actually real, because the soldiers actually saw the angel and the rolling of the rock away. They were there. And so to protect the lie, this is how powerful Satan is, people. To protect that lie, they had all the soldiers killed.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really I shouldn't say you. I don't think about those things reading scripture, because it's not every little detail is in there, but when they put it in such that way, it really does.
Right.
Because not everything was hunky dory back then.
Hunky or dory. Yeah. Tommy out. Well, my favorite part, when Jesus arose, the veil in the temple was ripped in two. I love that part too, giving me direct access to him. Mm-hmm. In other words, he gave his cell number anytime I need to talk to him. That is awesome.
And it was torn from top to the bottom, which couldn't have been done.
Can't be done.
Right.
Can't be done.
Let's see here. Michelle wants to know how you're feeling since you're not smoking.
I am, first off, speaking of health, I want to thank you, because she was sicker than a dog yesterday. I mean, it's some of the sickest I've seen you in a long time, and you're rarely sick. So the fact that you were able to muster up the energy to do this is awesome. The first probably 15 days, it wasn't good. I didn't get the relief I normally do. I didn't sleep well. I was irritable. It wasn't good. But over the last 3 days, something is broken, so to speak, and it's been wonderful. I believe that I am more focused and sharper and not anxious or irritable like I've been. And it's been quite easy. I mean, I met some friends out yesterday at a restaurant / bar, and it was just no big deal. You know, everybody was around was dragging, and I'm just like, no, I didn't. You know, I'm now in the groove. You know how you get in that groove, and it's like, you know, there were times early on where I didn't want to go to a restaurant because I didn't want to be around beer and be tempted. I didn't want to play golf because that's where I smoke cigars the most on the golf course. And now it's just like, you know, so there's been a lot of relief. So thank you for asking.
Yeah. Chris Hollywood is on
What's
Instagram.
up, Hollywood?
He's giving me some love. He said I'm the best. Because he works with you, so he knows that.
Yes, I do feel better. Thank you for the Netflix recommendations. This list.
The life list. Yeah.
Oh,
wasn't it?
awesome.
Yes. It's a very it's a good movie.
It is.
You know what else I watched since I've kind of been on the couch the last few days? I finally got around to watching Wicked.
Okay.
And I cried twice.
Okay.
Twice. And then I watched the making of Wicked, which was also very good. Because I don't know. It's just good.
Teresa Vargo says, great discussion today. Thank you. Up at the top.
Well, come
Hello,
on now.
Inside Out Wayne. He's there. I invited Wayne to come to Soma. He'll be going to Cedar Creek,
Okay.
which is awesome.
What did Tommy say? I taught young adults in Sunday school 20 years ago. We covered Revelation roughly. It was a tough subject. Yeah.
It is a tough subject.
That's why no one wants to do it.
That's why most pastors stay away from it.
But the thing I love about Sammy's preaching is, especially with that, is that he doesn't dumb it down. He makes it relatable.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
No, totally agree. So, and did you say Chris Hollywood was on? Because I don't.
He's on Instagram.
Oh, he's on Insta. All right.
Yeah.
He's coming. There he is, Chris Hollywood. We'll be chatting with him shortly.
Read that.
Sharon is the best.
Yeah. There's my short for the weekend right there.
There it is.
I just wanted you to say that.
Okay. Anyway, he's coming. He's coming on Sunday at Stranahan. Okay, who is this crew?
Well, my dad's taking the picture.
Okay.
I was going to do a little Easter fashion through the years, but it's just too much.
Obviously, that's you in the bottom left with the little bonnet on.
Yeah, me, and then my sister Mary, who passed away in 2017 of cancer at a very young age. Janet is in the blue coat. Susan is right behind Mary. And then Joyce is standing above me with her hand on my shoulders. Anne is in the red coat. And Diane is in the green coat. Then Tom, my only brother.
The only brother. Pray for him still,
Karen,
people.
who is middle behind. So there's 14 and a half years between me and Karen, and there's 9 kids.
And she's the oldest.
And then my mom. But look at all the little Easter outfits. Isn't that the knee socks?
Did you guys have to help each other get dressed, or did your mom
Are you kidding me?
do it all?
How old do you think? I'm probably 3 there.
I know. I'm saying.
No idea.
So who's dressing you? Is it your mom, or is it your older sisters?
Probably Karen. I mean, Karen had to step up, because she was what? There's 14 and a half years between us, about almost 13 and a half or whatever. So yeah, she was changing diapers and stuff. But isn't that funny? I mean, but look, awesome. All of our bonnets, all of our out coats, skirts, the shoes, even all of that. So yeah, there you go.
Little knee socks.
I try to find one of you guys, of your family. You don't really have a whole lot of.
My sister Sally has all the family albums.
Pictures.
Yep. Yeah. She's got them all.
Yeah.
Happy Easter to you both. Great show today. Glad the weather's improving. Be back in Northwest Ohio next week. Still enjoying the Florida sunshine for a few more days.
Holly, you do not come back unless you bring that sunshine and warm weather. Okay.
Okay. Other than Saturday, it's supposed to be kind of poopy on Saturday, and then the weather, I think we've turned. We're taking the plastic down on the catio. So we're officially declaring that spring is going to stick around as we're making our way into summertime. So
all right.
So there you go. All right, what else do you want to show as we wrap this up?
So the tallest cross in the world.
South America.
No.
Is my guess. No?
Well, Spain.
Spain? Okay, that's
There it
not
is.
South America.
It's a little fuzzy picture. I don't even know how to say it. Cruz de la Quedos in the Valley of the Fallen in Spain
That's close enough.
stands at 492 feet. So how
Wow.
tall is the UT Tower? Or like the first hill on the Millennium or something?
Yeah, I don't know, but that's tall.
So that is 492 feet tall. That's the tallest cross in the world.
Okay.
And just because I am equal opportunity for Easter, EOE.
Oh my gosh, is that the biggest Easter egg?
The world's largest Easter egg weighs in at 5,000 pounds.
Sacrilege.
It's in Alberta, Canada, and it took 12,000 hours to complete, and it's actually made from 3,500 pieces of aluminum. It was like a little piece of art.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of cool, though? I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For the heathens
That's
to
all
worship.
I got. I don't know.
For the heathens to worship.
All right, whatever.
Anyway.
All right, Monday.
Yes, Monday, noon, right here.
What are small, tangible ways we, as in we all, can show respect to one another?
I like that.
Think about that over the weekend.
Oh, I've got a bunch.
Comment in the comments Monday.
Okay.
Or when we post this on Sunday.
Yep.
No, not Easter Sunday.
No,
take the day off.
well, we'll see.
I'm taking the day off.
Share this video, especially people locally that may need a place to, worship. Strand Inn, 10 o'clock. Doors open at 9:30. It's going to be awesome.
All right. Okay, that's it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Share the video, everybody. Happy Easter.
Have a great weekend.
Resurrection Sunday.
Soma at 10 Sunday, Stranahan.
Strand Inn Theater.
Denny Schaefer. He's an idiot.